I'm Barbara Venezia, and welcome to the 10th edition of Feet to the Fire. It's sponsored by the LA Times Daily Pilot, which of course I work for, and we would like to thank our partners tonight, Orange Coast College, NBTV, and KOCI Radio 101.5 FM. They are going to be taking the audio portion of our program tonight and replaying it. I want to thank you, all you audience members, for being here tonight. And this evening, my co-host and asking the tough questions with me is my friend and the man who started me in journalism, Tom Johnson.
Good to be here, Barb.
It's good to have you here. We haven't been on the stage for a few years.
No.
I know.
I'm trying to see if anybody else could fill the role.
Well, Feet to the Fire differs from other candidate forums because we are a talk show format. And this gives you an insight into the candidates' personalities as well as their opinions. And so why don't we meet our candidates right now? Sitting right to Tom's right is, running for District 7, is Fred Ameri. Fred's lived in Newport for 19 years. He's a planner and an engineer. He earned his BS in civil engineering at Cal Poly Pomona, his master's degree in urban planning and engineering at Cal State Long Beach. You did graduate work at the University of California, Irvine. Fred's a businessman, an entrepreneur, with a 40-year career at RBF Consulting, major infrastructure and project management firm. Over the last 40 years, he served on a bunch of committees and associations. He was president of the Harbor Ridge Homeowner Association, vice chairman of the California Regional Water Quality Board, Santa Ana region. He's a member of the he was a member of the Newport Planning Commission, Newport Bay Watershed Executive Committee, Board of Governors of the California Wetlands Recovery, World Affairs Council, American Planning Association, the Red Cross. He's a member of the Orange County Taxpayers Association, and you can visit Fred's website at fredameri.com. So let's hear it for Fred. Sitting next to Fred is his opponent, Phil Greer. He's a 25-year resident of Newport Beach and has a degree in political science from UCLA and a law degree from Southern Western University School of Law. His law offices are located here in Newport Beach. His wife, Arlene, is the immediate past chair of the Newport Beach Arts Commission, and Phil serves as an unofficial counsel to the Newport Beach Arts Foundation. Phil also served on Orange County Public Finance Advisory Committee. You can visit Phil's website at philgreer2016.com. Let's hear it for Phil. Now, running for District 5, sitting next to Phil, is Mike Glenn. He's a longtime Newport resident, business owner, and activist. He served as vice president of the Newport Beach Republican Assembly, longtime volunteer for the Newport Harbor Republican Women, chair of the government relations for the Newport Harbor Elks Lodge, a sworn alternate voter for the Orange County GOP, and has run a site dedicated to news and small government in Newport Beach called SaveNewport.com. He's the owner of a custom software development company called Devion, and his website is glenn2016.com. And his opponent is Jeff Herdman. He's a longtime resident, a retired administrator businessman who holds a BS from Cal State Long Beach and a master's degree from Cal State Fullerton, a doctorate in educational administration from Chapman University. He served as president of the Little Balboa Island Property Association, Owners Property Association, president of the Balboa Island Improvement Association, the Newport Beach Charter Revision Committee, and the Tidelands Management Committee. He's also, are you still on the Newport Beach Civil Service Board? No, good move. And you can visit Jeff at jeffherdman.com. Those are your candidates. And of course, Tom, we have some candidates that are not here.
That's right.
As I wrote in my 2 columns ago, none of the Dave Ellis candidates are here. Lee Lowry, Will O'Neill, and Brad Avery. And after I wrote that column, a lot of people emailed me, and I have to say that if I was their political consultant, I agree with Dave Ellis. I would not have put them on stage. I have talked to 2 of them, Brad and Will. And in order to sit on this stage, you have to be very self-assured, and you need to know the issues. And I got to tell you, I didn't get that from those candidates. I wouldn't have put them on stage, and I think Dave's done a right job for that. But that speaks volumes as to who they are.
Well, it was interesting because I went out and I tried to make contact with all three of them. Successfully made contact with one and had coffee. One I tried multiple different ways to get in touch with, and finally even tried to go through his wife. That was
Well,
a
Lee
Facebook
Lowry,
friend.
I
just
think
couldn't
I
get it.
called that guy about 4
So-
times, wouldn't return a call.
So it's too bad because I think the people in the community deserve to hear voices of everybody. and
Well, it
it's
was
too bad
funny
that-
because Will told me he didn't like what I wrote. And so I said to him, well, it
And
doesn't
I always told you
matter.
that's good.
Right. It doesn't matter if you like me or not. It's for the public and for your campaign. And Brad Avery, I don't think he's got he's running for Tony Petros' seat. And did Shelley came in today, okay. Shelley Henderson did pull her papers today. I've called Shelley 4 or 5 times, sent her emails. I've written about Shelley several months ago, but she didn't respond for being on this panel tonight. But I did talk to Brad. You know, Brad works for OCC, so I thought, well, he would be here because OCC was hosting it. Brad told me that he had made plans with friends and was going to Catalina. And he'd made those plans way before he had decided to run for office. So I asked him if it was a charity event or business. He said no. And then I suggested that maybe what he should do is take the helicopter service back here for tonight. And he told me that he would try to find someone who had a helicopter. So he's partying with his peeps in Catalina.
But here's the caveat to the whole thing. While you were trying to get in touch with Brad, you were also trying to get in touch with Dave Ellis. And Brad told you he was going to be in Catalina, and Dave told you Brad was going to be in San Francisco. So
Right, he said he had obligations in Northern California. But it's very interesting, and that brings me to the state of where our city council is today, and to Team Newport. And I think that we should talk a little bit about their report card, don't you, Tom?
I think that'd be great.
And, you know, I mean, are they doing a good job?
Well, first of all, let's do this. Let's start it off. Let's get everybody comfortable. We'll ask a question, have you all kind of get dusted off and give an answer. Mike, let's start with you. 2014, 2 years ago, if my memory serves me correct, you were a big advocate of Team Newport and a big change for our city government.
Yeah.
2 years later, you've seen them in the rearview mirror. How do they look?
Not good. Their promises, well, first, we had the City Hall, which is an easy target. In fact, even the people in office have said that they went overboard with it. But they kept hammering it. They kept hammering the fiscal irresponsibility. They promised that they would lower taxes, stop the violations of property rights. They'd get the pension and the budgets under control and shrink the amount of spending. They promised that they would save the fire rings and stop the dock tax. And they have literally failed on every single item. They've raised the taxes, they've increased the amount of people on CalPERS pensioning, which is, there's nothing wrong with people being on pensions, but it's clearly a problem that we need to get under control, not expand. They continued to attack property rights, they've firmed the dock tax, and they got rid of just as many fire rings as the previous council was saying that they wanted to get rid of. So they've accomplished 0 of their goals. I think that I share probably a common feel with the rest of the community that we got duped on that election. And so that's why I'm running this time.
Okay. Jeff, let's go to you and let's talk about, continue on with Team Newport. And so you're sitting here tonight. I'd like your evaluation of what Team Newport has accomplished, and maybe why you're here as a result of what they've done. And also maybe, how do you run against a candidate that doesn't show up at something like this?
One thing that they proposed to do and didn't happen, Mike, was get rid of the bunnies.
Right.
So the bunnies have survived Team Newport, which I'm very pleased about. My grandkids love them. What's my evaluation of Team Newport? let me.
Now, I've seen you in action at city council meetings, so don't bluff
All
me
right.
here.
Let me answer it this way, all right? I've been in this city for a little over 60 years. I'm very used to council members who are independent thinkers, who do their research, who state their opinions based on the majority opinion of their constituents. And what I see happening with Team Newport, what I've seen happening for the last 2 years, is a concept that takes place in Irvine, it takes place in Costa Mesa, and it's known as block voting, and it's very disappointing to me. It's very disappointing. Their entire performance is very disappointing. Now, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about what happened to me, Tom. Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Okay. There was an attempt by the opposition to block my candidacy.
Oh, yeah, sure. This is an important one we're going to get to, but let's get to it.
Okay.
I think to give a little background, you were a civil service.
I was just going to say that.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a section of the city charter that addresses civil service board members and their ability a year after their service ceases to be employed by the city and paid a salary by the city. My opposition latched on to the words employment and salaried employee,
Right.
and tried to block my candidacy, and it put me in the position of having to sue the city, go to court. 2 weeks ago, the ruling was in my favor. I would not be an employee of the city, and the stipend that city council members receive in the form of an expense reimbursement is not considered a salary. So obviously I was very pleased with that, but it did put my campaign on hold for about 4 weeks.
Sure.
And it was expensive.
It was expensive. We're not asking for reimbursement, though, of legal fees. It's taxpayer money that would be coming to me from the city, and I'm just not comfortable with that. So I'm aggressive about trying to recoup that money and move forward.
Well, it sounds like, and if we continue on, I think, can I get a thumbs up? Are you two also disappointed in the Team Newport standings at this point?
Very.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Fred, let me start with you then.
Yes.
On kind of a follow-up here is, knowing the kind of money that their backing came in last time, 2 years ago, and through to a campaign, how do you start a campaign that can fight against that? Now, I must compliment you too, because the first flyer that showed up in my mail came from Fred Ameri. So I could see you're starting there, but how do you battle that kind of money that they seem to have, gotten behind them in the past?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and that my response to you is that they claim they spend $900,000 on those 4 candidates. I'm fortunate enough that when I started as a busboy in Village Inn restaurant 50-some years ago, I went through my career of 43 years and developed that company to 1,200 people. So I'm fortunate enough that I pocketed a few dollars when we sold the company. The majority of the financing of my campaign is by myself. So I'm not indebted to any kind of an organization or team or individuals. So I have the resources that if they write a check, I write a check bigger than them.
Okay, that's great. I loved the quote that you gave me a few weeks ago when I told you that your opponent, Will O'Neill, would be here. You said, evidently he's got something or someone to hide. Maybe we can eliminate the middleman and have Dave Ellis show up for Mr.
Yes.
O'Neill at Feet to the Fire. I would rather debate the puppet master than the puppet any day. And so, talking about the puppet master, do you feel that the city council right now is being controlled by outside forces?
Absolutely. The part of the council, there are 7 people. 4 of them were Team Newport. And to be honest with you, even at that time, I supported a couple of them, like Mike. I even gave fundraisers for one of them at my house.
So you're very disappointed in that.
Absolutely disappointed, but I don't want to go through my disappointment. One thing I've learned in my career is that when something goes wrong, when we don't get a big contract, let's sit down and talk about what we did wrong, correct that for the next time. So that's why I don't want to talk about what they have done wrong. I want to move forward, get in there, and correct everything that they have done wrong.
So Phil, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you think? I mean, you're a longtime resident, first time into politics. What motivated you to do that? Was it because you're seeing what's happening on the city council?
Absolutely, and I look at it from a little bit of a different perspective. But first, I want to say that I'm going to go see Fred and borrow some money because he's obviously got the most.
Well, you should have become a planner engineer. Yeah, you should have become a planning engineer instead of a lawyer.
That's what my parents said too. So we're even on that one.
Just kidding.
I think I look at it a little bit differently. My wife sits on the Arts Commission, and I look at it almost as a cultural attack on this community. You look at the things this community does. Take, for instance, the symphony that was the other night down on the Civic Center green. A green that Team Newport belittled, besmirched, and just said was useless. 4,500 people were out there on a Sunday night to see the Pacific Symphony. Okay? That's what the city is about. It's the culture, it's the art, it's the families, it's the grandkids climbing on the rabbits. And that's what we're talking about. And these Team Newport people don't understand that. If you look at the combined residency of the 4 people that are on there that were elected by Team Newport, they have less than 10 years in this community. If you add Mr. O'Neill, that's 5 people for 12 years. That's less than 3 years a person. You can't understand this community without having been a part of it. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, is because I see the character of this community being challenged and being cut up. And I think it's wrong. I think we all moved here for a certain reason.
Here's a follow-up to that I'd like to ask you is, as was proven with Jeff, politics get ugly.
Yes.
They came out and tried to get you out of the race with the civil service deal. Phil, the other day, I was out, somebody handed me a legal packet on Phil Greer. So let me just get this out of the way. And these kind of things are uncomfortable for me, as they might be for you, but let me just address a couple of things that were told to me. That Phil Greer has ongoing litigation that could interfere with his run. He has almost been disbarred in the past and has a medical issue that he's trying to deal with.
How much time you got? I take it back, 2010, 2011, I represented Chris Street, who is
Right.
the former county treasurer. I kept Mr. Street in office for 4.5 years. It finally went to trial. The court found Mr. Street was incredulous in his testimony, that he made things up, that he misrepresented, and he breached his fiduciary duty with regard to a liquidating trust. The appeals court found that the trial court was absolutely right. The appeals court also said Mr. Greer did everything he could. He was there, he presented evidence, he cross-examined people, he challenged evidence. And the problem was not Mr. Greer's representation, the problem was Mr. Street's incredulous testimony. So that will go to trial at some point. I haven't almost been disbarred, unless somebody's telling me something I don't know.
Okay.
I have 2 dings against me with the bar. One goes back to 1994 and dealt with an issue where I represented a client, the case was settled, there was about $1,500 that remained. The client claimed it was theirs, the medical people claimed it was theirs. I didn't have lien releases or anything valid. So what I did, trying to be a good guy, I took that money and I wrote a 4-page letter to the state bar, and I sent them the check. They then cashed the check, and then
Well, the
dinged.
state would always be looking for
Yeah, so the state took the check, they dinged me because I didn't have sufficient funds in my trust account. So that was the first one. The second one, I represented a company that we bought a company out of Georgia, and the board of directors was misrepresented too in terms of what we did. Under California Corporations Codes, we can sue the board member and have him thrown off. The individual tried twice to have me thrown off the case, both motions in court and by going to the state bar. The state bar said no, no. Finally, on the third time, the bar said, okay, we got something here, we don't know what it is. Instead of fighting it and spending $50,000, I said, give me a reproval. It doesn't impact my ability. I would also argue that if I'm such a bad lawyer, why 3 years ago, 4 years ago, did Councilman Kevin Muldoon, who was running for the Orange County Community College District outside of Newport Beach, where he represents now, hire me to represent him? If I'm that bad of an attorney.
Now, Mike, 2 years ago when you were considering running, you were considering for a different district.
Correct.
And so now you're running and there are questions. I keep getting questions by people who are emailing me about your residency. On the list of candidates that the city issued last week, you were the only one without an address listed.
Yes, yes.
So where are we living these days?
So where are you living?
I'm living on Balboa Island. I'm on Agate Street, which is the ferry road. And I'm right at the end of the street over there by the mainland.
So we got all of the icky issues.
Well,
I wanted
controversial
to kind of expand on the whole puppeteer thing, if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind.
Sure,
Now, of
sure.
course, I'd like to tell the audience all about my ideas for the city, but I think that
No, we'll get to more
We're
stuff.
getting to it.
Okay,
We're
all right.
getting to it.
But
Just
I
bear
think that
with
this
us. We're going
needs.
to get through a whole bunch of things.
Fred's
All
the
right.
only one, Tom, that they haven't tried to knock out of the race.
Well, we'll get to that too.
Because they haven't got anything on me after 55 years of living here and 20 years in Newport Beach. I'm just a nice kid, that's all.
Mike, jump back
So,
in.
Mike, your puppeteer, you want to chime in on that?
So Dave Ellis, that we all know him as a campaign manager. This is a job that is a rounding error on his total income for the year. What he really does is he's a land use guy. He goes out and he finds land that people want to buy or sell to public entities, and he makes sure that that transaction goes well for his clients. Or if they want to build something, he makes sure that the city council is on board with them building it. If we have some conflicts with Greenlight, as we do with both of the projects happening right now in Fashion Island, they just seem to be ignored by the city that Greenlight even exists. So that's his real job. Now, he installs candidates that make his real job easier for him. So if you look at the people on our city council right now, with the sole exception of Duffy, who's a great guy, everybody is involved with building. We've got Selich, he's a builder himself. We've got Tony Petros, his job is to tell people how many parking spots they need, where to put sidewalks. We've got Diane Dixon, who was an employee of the Irvine Company up until recently. We've got Kevin Muldoon, who worked with Bob McCaffrey and Dave Ellis on the property rights issue when it came to the legality of the dot tax. We've got Scott Piotr as a planning commissioner and an architect. We've got, you name it, they've all been involved with building, which makes Dave's job a lot easier. So is there a puppeteer in there? Well, literally everybody on council used Dave Ellis to get there.
Well, and that brings us to the high-density development, which is a very hot topic right now, especially around Fashion Island. You mentioned the Museum House and 150 Newport Center Drive, which is replacing the car wash. Let's talk about that. Now, Line in the Sand, the PAC Line in the Sand, sent this to us. And the general plan is a blueprint of development in the city and something that we voted on in 2006. With Newport Beach almost built out, developers are relying more and more on amendments, exceptions, waivers, zoning code changes, and improper use of planned community designation. What, if anything, would you do to address this? And Tom, do you want to start by asking?
Yeah, Jeff.
Yes.
Why don't you start in? Let's talk about the two projects that the Museum House and the 150.
Are you for them or against them?
I am not for them.
Okay.
I
and
mean,
why
let me
not?
tell you why,
Okay.
all right? Other than
So
traffic.
just, let me just give a little background. The Museum House project is where the museum used to be in Fashion Island area. It's a high-rise going in there now. The 150 development is the Beacon Bay car wash development.
Correct. Other than being against them because of traffic and density and water use and the obvious reasons and the impact that those factors would have on our city, we have, and you mentioned this, Barbara, the general plan, which was written in 2006, and it gives an absolutely beautiful picture of what our city should look like by the year 2025. Nowhere does it include any kind of 25-story structure in Fashion Island. It does not address I call it the car wash project. I feel very strongly about us our city adhering to that beautiful vision for our city that's described in the general plan, that we should adhere to it. There'll come a point in time, I'm sure, before 2025 when we need to take another look at it, because we're to the point now in our city where we're almost completely developed, and we have to start looking at reuse of existing properties and reuse of existing land. And that in itself, I think, would warrant a revisit to the general plan. But my response to that is, I want to see us stick to that general plan. I don't want to see, Phil referred to it beautifully, I don't want to see our culture destroyed, our history destroyed, our traditions destroyed in this city as a result of development, inappropriate development.
Now, Fred,
Fred, where do you stand on those projects?
yeah, because he's a planner. That was your background, right?
I worked with Pereira 40-some years ago as a kind of a runner boy. I really didn't have anything to do with the plan, but I was involved in the process. But getting back to the two projects, first of all, I don't like either one. Okay. Number one, the museum is a one-story building, and the clutter of condominiums that are there is just hideous. Dave Ellis is the lobbyist for the developer who wants to build a high-rise there, if you didn't know. And there are two things wrong with this thing. Number one, we have grown enough in Newport Beach, in the last 10 years especially. Now we have to be very, very careful. I would make the requirement of any new development in Newport Beach, the number one issue would be traffic. How does it impact the surrounding areas? Because I'm not willing to compromise the things that you've had to give somebody to make more money. Whether it's the Irvine company or whoever, as I told you, I'm not connected to anybody. I'm just my own man. Second is, they have millions of dollars, and they want to move to Costa Mesa. You know what's going to happen when they move? All that money is going to go to Costa Mesa. The same thing, in a different way, is with the 150. Another high-rise, another high-rise, another high-rise. This is the high-rise, the argument is, it's just a little space and all that, we'll do parking, underneath parking. But the traffic is going to be there, and we've got enough traffic already. Our Coast Highway at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is congested.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
Phil, I want where you stand on those two issues, but I want to talk too about traffic, and it seems like what everybody in the development community is doing is they're taking amendments and exceptions and waivers and zoning changes, and they're trading this one for this one and everything like that. So how do you stand on the projects, and then how do we deal with the traffic issue that has so dramatically hit Newport Beach?
Well, I think first of all, I'm against the two projects. I'm against spot zoning. I'm against all of these things that play games with the numbers, with the general plan, and create these exceptions. As an ancillary point, real quickly, we were at the chamber function yesterday morning, and Will at least showed up to that one, didn't answer the questions, and relied upon the Woody's Wharf case to say, I can't answer that because I may have to vote on it. For the record, I went back and I pulled the Woody's Wharf case this morning. It does not say that. It does not preclude a candidate from standing up and making an opinion as to what they would do. It just doesn't do that, and Will has misrepresented the law, and I think he's done it again to duck out of having to answer those questions that Barbara alluded to. Both projects are unacceptable. I think Jeff said it best when he quoted me. It attacks the culture. It attacks our history. And neither of those projects fit. I think with traffic, you have to look at alternatives. You have to look at how do you enhance parking down in Corona del Mar? How do you maybe reroute traffic to go along San Joaquin over to Newport Coast as opposed to going through PCH and Corona del Mar? How do you do some of those things? And I think that's a long-term issue. I don't think there's any immediate relief that we're going to get, but I think if we work together, and if we work with other communities, if we work with Costa Mesa, if we work with Irvine, so that when everybody leaves Irvine, they don't funnel everything down Jamboree, and it impacts us. You work with these other communities, and we don't have that now. You talk to the city council people in Irvine, you talk to the city council people in Huntington or Costa Mesa, and they've never heard from our city council people. You talk to the staff down in City Hall. They've never heard from these city council people. There's no communication, and I think that's what's critical, and that's what we're losing. At least we used to talk to each other. I may disagree with Fred, but I'll talk to Fred.
Right.
And so that's not happening.
Jeff, before I come to you, let me jump to Mike here. Your website is called Save Newport.
Correct.
How do we do that with these issues? And where do you stand on the development issues?
We need to honor our voter initiative called Greenlight. Greenlight allows for 100 residential units to be built per area per 10 years. Just a few years ago, we took 79 hotel units in Fashion Island and converted them into condo units. They were outside of the general plan. This is a general plan amendment. The city refuses to acknowledge that this is a general plan amendment because then you would need to subtract those 79 from the total allocation of 100, and you'd wind up with 21 units that are available. Both of those projects are in excess of 21 units. Both of those projects must go to a public vote if we're going to be honoring Greenlight, which is a citizens voter initiative. If we want to say we're just going to ignore the law and bulldoze through the projects that special interests want, well, then we can continue along the same path. But we need to honor Greenlight. We need to bring this to a public vote if those two are going to be above 21 units.
Jeff, you wanted to say
Yeah, I mentioned reuse of land as an inevitability over the next 20, 25 years because we're just about maxed out. I would, as a city council member, absolutely insist that any new development within the city have a definite plan to mitigate the traffic impact on our city. I believe Mike almost said what I'm going to say. He used the word alternatives, or Phil, you did. But I think that's another thing we really need to look at in this city. We can't widen our roads any wider. We can't do subways in this city. It's important that we begin to look at alternatives as far as the traffic impact, not input, but impact. My wife and I have noticed in San Francisco, in New York, and even in the city of Los Angeles, they've got bicycle programs for getting around the city. You drop your money in a little slot, you pick up a bike, you take it to where you're going, you park it there and leave it there. We need to start looking at alternatives within the city.
Fred, did you want to say something?
Yes, having one of my specialties is traffic, and I want to thank Phil for quoting me word by word on something that I said yesterday, which I brought to everybody's attention that traffic is not only local, it's regional. It's not the Newport people that on a weekend clutter our streets. It's funneling down like water from the upper inland areas. And the thing we need to do, and that was my solution that Phil also mentioned, is that we need to have communication with the cities that contribute into the tributary to our city's traffic. And we have to talk about what are their needs and what are the kind of population from their cities that contribute to ours, and come up with a regional plan that would help us to welcome their people to come to our city. I don't have the time to go into the detail of how, but regional traffic is not as important as local, but it is very important.
Well, to continue on with the discussion of development,
Yes.
no discussion Newport Beach would be complete on development if we didn't talk about Banning Ranch.
Yes.
Mike, I believe you're a big proponent of the development of proper development of Banning Ranch, is that correct?
The voters are. The voters voted in 2006 to approve this plan, which actually allows for more development than the people are asking for. Additionally, they took 80% of the land and they're
Well, you said
allocated.
people are, is it a good project, do you think? Personally?
I think it's a property rights issue. I think it comes back to, you know, with the property rights that Newport Beach gives property owners, they need to go to a public vote, which is a green light, and they did, and they passed it. And so they're now given the property rights to do that, and what they do with their land is their decision. I think that they're making an intelligent business decision to do that. But we need to be mindful of the traffic impacts that they're going to inherently come with new development. So that's the yellow flag there, is the traffic. But yeah, I think when it comes down to it, they're not using all of their allocated, all of what the public gave them permission to build. So I think that's fair of them, as well as, you know, it's an old oil field. Nobody can even get onto it. They're going to clean it up. They're going to give 80% of the land back to the people as a public open space. That's commendable.
Phil, you mentioned working with other cities more closely. Obviously, if Banning Ranch goes through, there's going to be potentially a heavy impact on Costa Mesa. Have we done enough for a neighboring city? Do we need to have more discussion there? And is Banning Ranch a good project?
Well, you know, we talked about at another forum, Costa Mesa coming over and using the West Side Community Center if they build it. I'm still proposing we just build a wall, keep the Costa Masons out, and you know, move the museum house over there too, and I think we resolve all of our problems.
Good solution.
Yeah. It's.
I think build a wall has already been taken.
I think so. Yeah, but I think I said it first, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is when you look at Banning Ranch, when you look at the proposed development, and you look at other things in this community, and you go back to Museum House, you go back to the car wash project, these are valuable assets that we have. And what this city council has failed to do, and I'm going to sound like Donald Trump, and I really don't want to, is negotiate better, get a better deal. When you look at Banning Ranch, one of the other issues is whether or not, how to get across Superior. Do you dig a tunnel? Do you put a parking lot there? Do you enhance that park? Do you make a road there? You say to Banning Ranch, we're going to let you do this on a very, very limited scale. But these are the things we want. We want restored wetlands over here. We want you to work with the Orange Coast River Park people to enhance that estuary. We want to do a number of different things and leverage that out. We're not, if you go to Museum House, as Fred said, that's a museum. That's zoned for culture. Okay, you say, okay, you're going to take away that museum. You're going to give us something else. Yeah. You're going to give us a performing arts center. You're going to give us something like that. Right. So I think that we're not using our assets, and I think it goes back to what Mike said about who's pulling the strings here. It's Dave and a bunch of developers who think that they can just get 5 guys elected and get what they want. And that's why we need to stand up. That's why we need to cut better deals and say, okay, if we're going to let you build on 20% of this, then we want to see how you're really going to restore that 80%. And we want that to be done first. We want that oil field cleaned up. We want the natural lands put back. And then maybe we'll let you have the 20%. But that's where we're failing. That is where, as a community, we're failing because there's no long-term vision.
Jeff, you're on council. You talked earlier about, making sure that we, save Newport in the future, and so our build-out's complete. What do you see as the build-out of Banning Ranch? First of all, you in support of the project, and tell us what you see there as a person sitting on if you get on the city council dais. What do you see the development there looking like?
One of the first people I met when I decided to run for city council was Phil Betancourt, who's in the audience tonight. Phil introduced me to the whole Banning Ranch concept at Starbucks on Pacific Coast Highway one morning. Brought me a beautiful layout of what the plan is, talked about even the development of a park along the Santa Ana River in cooperation with Fountain Valley and Newport Beach and Costa Mesa. My next step was to actually take a tour of Banning Ranch. I called the gal who, her first name is Robin. I'm sorry, it's been a while. I can't remember, Vidarelli or something like that. And she put me in her car and we took a drive all through the property. And I had never been up there before. I had never looked past the big rocks that are on Pacific Coast Highway, so I had absolutely no idea what was back there. I was amazed at the size of the property, number one, and I was amazed at the condition of the property. It's absolutely filthy in sections. There's old equipment all over the place. I asked her to explain to me, to give me a visual on exactly what Banning Ranch LLC is proposing. How much of this property are they actually talking about developing? And she drove me over to it, and she drove me around it, and compared to the 400 acres, the actual size of the property that they were proposing to develop at that time, and it's been scaled down since then, just does not, to me, have that much of an impact on the wetlands, the wildlands. I think their plan is to overall turn it into a beautiful development, a beautiful park, and open it to the public. And I support it.
Well, let's switch gears for a minute and let's talk about the arts. Because 2 years ago, the biggest campaign issue for Teen Newport, as you talked about, was the bunnies. And the waste of community dollars. Several years later, the bunnies is still there, and we are adding more art in the park. And we have a vibrant concert program, as you mentioned, Phil. So what I'd like to open the conversation up to talking about the arts program, the public-private partnership. You know, people look at Newport as a rich city. Should the people on the Arts Commission, should they be asking people in the community for money? Should it be funded by the city as it has been in the past? Fred, let's start with you.
Well, you know, I myself personally, I love art of all kinds, performing. I go to the symphonies. I even bought a few books that I could afford, some art myself. But there are priorities. Rather than spending our money on bunnies and rabbits, first we got to take care of our broken sewers. It doesn't sound sexy, but when we get some stinking sewer in our living rooms, that's when we will wake up.
So you would
saying,
still say
yeah.
public-private partnerships as they have now?
Absolutely, absolutely. As long as it's money raised from the public, I have no problem spending 100% of it. But when it comes to spending monies that we need for some of our infrastructure, some of our infrastructure is 40, 50 years old.
Okay, all right. Well, Phil, now, I know this is a subject close to your heart, and you're biting at the bullet to get in
That's
there.
a single issue, I guess.
No, it's not my single issue. But my lovely wife's out here, and she's the immediate past
I
president
love the work she does.
of the Arts Commission. And I think before we get to that, though, there's a little-known group that was very influential in saving the bunnies. It was the Newport Beach Foundation for the Preservation of Concrete Bunnies. And I think they need to be recognized and acknowledged as the entity that saved those bunnies.
The real puppet masters.
The real puppet masters. You go out there and it's Stonehenge all over again. No, I think, I really believe art is integral to a community. It gives it culture, it gives it character. You go out to that sculpture garden on a weekend, Jeff's out there with his grandkids, there's families out there, there's young newlyweds taking pictures, there's all of that. 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, the Arts Commission put on a Saturday afternoon, a beautiful Saturday afternoon at 2:30, a exhibit of Joan Irvine Brandt, her 100-year centennial. Now, Joan Irvine Brandt was the wife of Rex Brandt and all of this. 250 people showed up on a Saturday afternoon to the library to hear a lecture and look at this art.
So you would continue funding through the city if you were elected?
I would support it strongly. I would look at other ways to do it. There's a part of the fund from the developer fees that's supposed to offset some of this. I think we need art. I think art is critical. You have 4,000 people showing up to concerts on the green. Those are things that are critical to this community because they give the community heart. Now, obviously, if you could do some public-private stuff, let's do it, and that expands it. But I think the city has an obligation to fund some of this stuff.
Mike, your thoughts? I think we're on the third phase of putting structures that have been approved through the city and paid for by the city into the park. Your thoughts on how it should be funded?
That'll be nice.
Yeah, I'm sitting a little too close to
Hey,
Mr.
everybody's
Greer
entitled
for
to
an
their
honest answer. I think it should be a private thing. I think that when you're taking taxpayer money and assigning it to things that don't directly benefit, other than the emotional, and I like some of the art there. Sure. But it doesn't have a direct feedback to the taxpayers. You have to travel to get to it. That's something that I think can and should be funded privately. I think that there are plenty of people in Newport Beach that are enthusiastic about art. Many of them are right here in this room. And I think that getting everybody together, I'm not going to say power back to the people, that's cliche. Getting everybody together and having them, people that are passionate about projects, those are the people that should be running these projects, is the people that show up and say, this is what I want.
So you think that this committee should be going out into the community and getting funding in that way, and if you were on the council, you wouldn't allocate funds for the arts?
We're paying $200,000 a year to have somebody teach the Arts Commission how to fundraise. That is unacceptable. There are far better uses for our money. If we can allocate that money to an instructor to teach people how to fundraise, we can allocate, at the minimum, we can allocate that to art. Now, I'm not saying pull the plug on everything all at once. I'm not, that's drastic. But yeah, we should phase it down, and we should allow people to figure out how to fundraise privately. I think there's plenty of people, and Newport Beach is shown to be a great spot for people to be very giving to the public, and art is something that's close to everybody's heart, including my own.
It's interesting when I look back on this community, one's an art project, one's not an art project, both affected kids, but when the Irvine Company wanted to take out that merry-go-round, it affected kids. When Piotr came in and said he wanted the bunny rabbits gone, I remember a pretty strong letter-writing campaign. Does that prove that the community, either of those, that the community speaking along those lines, that that's something that they want and expect in this community, though?
Well, I'm not, don't say that I'm against art.
Okay.
I'm saying, how do we fund it?
Okay.
I like art, and the things that I like, I contribute to, and I'd be more than happy to contribute to an art fund. But I don't believe that taking money from the public in order to produce this art is the right way to go about funding it.
So since we're talking about money, why don't we start talking about the city finances and the unfunded liabilities?
Do we have that in Newport Beach?
Yeah.
Why don't you take it from here, and let's talk about what the candidates feel about their financial health.
Let's start with Jeff. And first of all, Jeff, I probably know how you feel about the arts, but I want you to clarify that, because I got a tweet from you the other day, or no, I got a Facebook post or whatever. You were at a concert in the park, and you were enjoying yourself. So
Keep in mind I'm a retired educator, all right?
okay.
Let me just say this, that the arts are often what kept kids in school and got them graduated from school,
Okay.
all right? I have, because of that, always been a strong advocate, a strong supporter of the arts. In a city like ours, as sophisticated as it is, the arts have and culture have a definite spot. The dilemma is, if we had plenty of money in this city, I would absolutely, as a council member, support full funding of the arts.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned, you just almost launched us into another subject, which is the unfunded liability. But when we have a city that is faced with a $400 million deficit with the public employees retirement system, it's a dilemma. Let me tell you what disappoints me. Last Tuesday night, the council did approve funding, partial funding of the arts in our city, but as soon as it was approved, Councilman Piotr spoke up and said, if this appears on the agenda this time next year, I'll yank it so fast. It's an attitude, it's the attitude that's really disappointing, okay?
Okay, so let's jump now to the unfunded liability.
All right.
And I know the city of Newport Beach has been working to try to pay that down. Are we on course on that, or is there something else that needs to be done?
Given the parameters that we have to work within, we are on the right course. We're on a accelerated pay down program over a 5-year period right now. That we actually have a 18 or 19-year pay down period, but we're making accelerated payments right now in order to shorten that amount of time. What the actual solution to this is, I don't know if we actually have control over it as a city council, because we're working with legislation that's in place. We're working with a public employee retirement system. I had a long discussion with this on this topic initially at the very beginning of my campaign with our city finance manager, and he offered a solution that sounded good to me, because I saw it work within school districts, where school districts band together and they self-fund benefit programs, as opposed to depending upon public employees' retirement systems for health coverage, okay, just health coverage. So an effort like that, where cities combine together, form a coalition, work with PERS to revamp their system, to come up with new retirement programs that cost the employee less, that cost the city less, has to be done. The number of legacy employees that we have in the city of Newport Beach is what is creating this deficit for us, the number of legacy employees we have. And they worked for it, they deserved it. I'm a recipient of an income from the state teachers retirement system. I worked 40 years and contributed to that.
Right.
I deserve it, they deserve it.
Mike, let me jump to you. You have a little bit of different plan. Certainly the unfunded liability is something that troubles you, and you've actually taken a look at calling for a reduction in staff.
Right.
So my question is, why don't you talk about that proposal, and who picks up the work of those staff members when we eliminate positions?
Sure. It's and it's not just eliminating staff positions, and I am in no way proposing firing anybody. This is a multi-pronged approach. We need to pay it down faster. It's the highest interest debt that the city has. So if you have a credit card with a 2% interest and a credit card with a 9% interest, which one are you going to pay down first? So we need to focus on this, and solely this on paying things down. We also need to increase efficiency in Newport Beach. We've got a lot of load. And unfortunately, it hasn't gone treated for a while. The water, for instance, this is a great thing to start with. Newport Beach is a unique city. We have 3 different providers of our water supply. We have Mesa Water, Municipal Water, Irvine Ranch Water District. Mesa Water is about half of what the community is currently paying for their water bill. It's $300 per acre foot. Newport Beach is about $550. Acre foot is acre of land filled a foot high with water. So it's also the amount of water that a family of 4 uses a year. So put that in perspective. So we've got a city right next door to us. It's paying half for water. Now it's also a local and cleaner water supply that's not tacked onto the state system. So we have the water restrictions that we're currently getting from the state could be largely reduced because we're pulling it out of the ground right underneath us. That employs about 19 people. If we were to simply tell Mesa Water, we're already connected with the pipes, turn it on, service Newport Beach, we cut the cost of our water in half, we lose 19 positions that can be used to fill the attrition with people simply retiring or leaving on their own accord of other positions inside of the city of Newport Beach. We cut our water supply in half and we have a 1,200-year supply of water there. So that's one example. Another example, I don't know if anybody's been in the planning department, it's packed with people. I would say that it's the most visited department in our city. They're standing around with papers in their hands, waiting to turn them into the city to get more papers back. This is all something that should at least have the option to be done online. If somebody wants to go in with papers, that's fine. But there are plenty of areas that we can really streamline to allow people that when they leave, we We simply reposition people within the city. Everybody keeps their jobs. We just shrink the total amount of liability that we have while heavily paying it down and focusing on that as well.
Why haven't we done that?
There are a lot of politics involved, especially when you're talking about outsourcing water. When you're talking about outsourcing any function of the city, and it's going to somebody could be turning a profit on that. There's a lot of behind the scenes shaking of hands, and winds up in gridlock. But I'm pretty open and honest about my positions. I'm sometimes to my detriment the most unambiguous person that you'll find up here.
Phil, what would you do about the unfunded liabilities, and how do you view it?
Well, I view it as the city is working really hard with the program it has to pay it down. I think what we've seen here between Jeff and Mike are alternatives, and I think that's what's missing from the discussion, is how do we get these alternatives? Do we look at rate reduction? Do we look at combining some systems and some programs? And those are the things that you have to be open to. The traditional, we're going to accelerate the debt, we're going to take the surplus and pay down the debt, those types of things that have been proposed by Team Newport have been rebuked by our financial analysts that are going to end up costing us anywhere from $7 to $25 million more than what we have if we just continue to go the course that we're going. So I'm very comfortable with the progress we're making. I mean, you pay down your debt, you still have a surplus, you're still taking care of your infrastructure, you're doing all those things. And I think credit has to be given to the Keith Currys and the Ed Seliges of the world and the Rush Hills of the world who put this plan into place. I sat on PFAC, which was set up right after the bankruptcy. And we looked at a lot of the same things that are being looked at now by the city council, and they don't work. You pay down your debt, you accelerate it when you can, you look for arguments on how to modify that, but you stay the course. And the programs that are being proposed don't stay the course, and they don't help the community.
Fred, you want to weigh in on the unfunded liabilities?
Well, yes. As far as accelerating the payments, it's a good idea, and I'm glad that they're doing it. Second is, as we all know, in any investment, there's a certain amount of risk. Right now, the staff doesn't have they don't have the risk of investments. So they have to take a little more responsibility for their investment.
Because they're protected on the state level?
Exactly. Second is, the same way that I said, traffic is not only, I usually look at things globally and then bring it down to the specifics. The real issue is not what we do in Newport Beach, what we need to do at the state level. We need to change the law. We need to change the law so the investors have more of a liability toward their own investments.
Let me jump in here. How does Newport Beach, viewed as a conservative city, change things in Sacramento?
Well, I'm talking, maybe theoretically.
Okay.
Hopefully, when we have a majority,
I
should
said home at night.
No,
I
no,
wish we could change
no,
things in Sacramento. I just don't want to do it.
I agree with you 100%. When we have 52 Democrats versus 28, the total of 80 in our assembly, I know it's not possible. But on the other hand, these are the ways to solve problems. By putting bandages is great. It stops the bleeding, but you need stitches.
Phil, you want to jump in?
I'm not as pessimistic as Fred is, and I'll tell you why. Back in the 80s, I was the general counsel to the Republican Senate caucus up in Sacramento. And that was a time of, Willie Brown and Dave Roberti over here, and John Lewis and Ed Royce over here screaming at each other. But at night, after the Democrats went to Frank Fat's and the Republicans went to Eilish's, everybody ended up at the Torch Club. Frank Fat's was a much better place to go, and we couldn't get in. And everybody had a bar stool.
You're going to be the most fun guy up there.
I'm telling you.
Go ahead.
But everybody had a bar stool, and what would happen is they would talk about what they were doing. They would compromise. So Willie would say to Dennis, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then they'd call one of us over and they'd say, this is how we're going to do it, and you'd go to the legislature the next day and you'd have compromise. We can do that. We can go, you know, I've represented, and I currently represent a bunch of people who are up in Sacramento. We can call them up and sit down and say, hey, this is how we do it. And you need that compromise. You need that communication. And one of the big issues I have with the way the city council is being operated now is there's no communication. They're not even talking to their own police and fire.
Right.
And how do you know what the police and fire want if you're not talking to them? How do you know what compromises you can get out of the Banning Ranch people or the Museum House people if you don't sit down and talk to them? And that's a big issue, and that's sort of how I view this. I think Fred's right in terms of you view it globally, but you also have those relationships that you build.
Absolutely.
And if you have those relationships, you can get things done.
Jeff, you want to
We
jump
have control over one thing regarding this in the city right now. We have a $14 million surplus this year. I feel very strongly that when we have the amount of indebtedness that we do in this city, that there ought to be policy in place that states that a certain percentage of our surplus is dedicated, is earmarked for the pay down of our debt. Right now, what happens to that $14 million? Yes, the council did take $3 million of it and reimburse the sewer fund because it was basically broke, okay? Yes. And that's a basic service that we have to provide as a city council. But the rest of the money, it turns out to be political as far as how it gets spent. And I just don't feel it should be that way. We need to take care of our infrastructure, our basic needs, and address our debt.
Mike, I want to start with you on this question is, we have unfunded liabilities and other things that the city's facing. What's the biggest infrastructure challenge in your mind that Newport Beach is facing, and how are we going to tackle that issue?
Well, we've got two of them. We have the seawall, and that's going to be, I believe, about 70 million. And we have the sewers, and that's going to be about 30 million. So we've got two big ones right there.
Yes.
And I want to just loop back to the unfunded pension liabilities. That's we have on the books that it's about $280 million. But to exit CalPERS, we would need to pay $1 billion.
Yeah.
So if we need to pay $1 billion, that's how much it really is. And looking forward on our books, we've got about 8 to 10 years left before this really is problematic for Newport Beach. So this is not something that says, oh, well, we've got, we've just got to figure out how to get more money or trim down here or this. This is a major problem that has serious impact on the future of Newport Beach, starting in about 8 years. And I apologize, I got off topic there. I think that we've got the seawall, which is already in progress. We've got the sewers for taking our wastewater out. Sewers is an easy problem to solve. We hand it over to Mesa Water. Same plan. They take care of it. They take they take care of our water in and out. And we don't need to raise. They were talking about raising taxes on water. We don't need to do that. We can cut our water costs and have somebody fix our sewers for us. So these are relatively easy things to solve. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also the only candidate running that doesn't have a campaign consultant.
You bring up a good question that I want to jump to there.
Yes.
Is we know Dave Ellis is, and we can get back to some of these other things, but we know Dave Ellis is behind Team Newport,
right?
And the candidates aren't here. Who's behind each one of you?
Uh-oh.
So Jeff, who's behind you as far as your campaign manager goes? Why don't you give us a little overview of your campaign, what you're trying to do, and how you're going to attack your campaign too?
My campaign manager is the same as Fred's, Dennis DeSnow. I interviewed
Honorable guy.
I interviewed 4 campaign consultants when my wife and I decided that I would run for city council, although we're both running and enjoying every minute of it. And I decided on Dennis. He has just been terrific. He's been an excellent consultant, guidance for me, and really crafted, taken what I want to do and crafted it into exactly what I want to express and how I want to present myself to the public.
Mike?
You asked me what I wanted to do.
Oh, well, let me come back to that in just a
okay.
second. Let me just get the campaign consultants.
Mike doesn't have one.
I don't have one. And to finish up on the last thing, though, not having a campaign consultant that kind of steers me in one direction or another, and being an entrepreneur myself, I'm able to see some things that a lot of people that are in office that are locked into this day-to-day routine aren't able to see. So these solutions that I'm presenting, they're a product of that environment.
And Phil, who's your campaign consultant?
It's three guys down at Blackie's. I'm using Chris Jones, who's out of Sacramento, does a lot of work down here. I've known Chris for 25 years. He's one of the best. He's one of the most ethical. You're going to see a very positive, very proactive campaign. Unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with some of the issues that you've brought up, but we're going to deal with them in a very open and positive manner. And that's what our campaign's been all about.
Now, Fred, why did you pick Dennis DeSnow? And do you think that will you and Jeff be kind of on a slate together since you're the same campaign
No,
consultant?
I'm my own man, he's his own man. That's
Okay,
it.
okay.
I'm not connected to anybody but myself. To be
You
honest
don't
with
seem to vacillate from that point at all. I'm serious about it.
basically, I talked to a whole bunch of people, and believe me, without really knowing him, I even interviewed Dave Ellis. I decided on Mr. DeSnow because I found him to be an honorable guy, no BS stuff, none of that stuff, no hanky-pankies. And I wanted to run a very strong campaign. Unfortunately, I remember 30, 40 years ago, you wouldn't even raise money to run for the city council.
Right.
The last few years, it's become so political that you have to have the money, the campaign manager. I have a team under the supervision of Mr. DeSnow and two other people that I can mention that have got the best reputation in the county. Kathy Tavaleras is here. She's been around forever. And Anthony Quo, who is a chair of the Planning Commission in the city of Irvine. These three are God-given people that could help me because I've never been, for all my 40-some years, I've always been a volunteer. You mentioned a few of them, but there are a lot more. I've never ever ran for anything. This is the first time I see our city being stolen from us by the kingmakers. We got 4 already, that's enough. Please let the other 3 come in so we have some dialogue rather than you have a kingdom of 7.
Let's go down the line. Dave Ellis has a reputation on going to whatever level a campaign needs in order to win that race.
Yes.
He's been pretty effective with it. And I've known some people that have been on the other end of some of his attacks. Is this campaign going to get dirty? Let's start with you, Jeff, and I'm going to give all of you a chance. And is it going to get dirty on your part if it gets dirty on theirs?
One of the things that I really like about Dennis was that when I started this out, I said I want to continually take the high road throughout this campaign. And so far, I've been able to do that. I've been able to maintain that position, and Dennis has really helped me in doing that. If it gets dirty,
Yeah.
I've done my research, all right?
Okay.
I've done my research. If it gets dirty, I'm prepared.
Well, politics is a contact sport, let's face it. Okay, so Mike, are you ready to get in there and throw a few punches if you need to?
You know, this is it's unfortunate that we're put in this ridiculous situation. This is a small city in the scope of, just even Orange County. And the fact that there's so much mudslinging going around, I've got Dave Ellis sending out emails about me that are just absolute fabrications. You were looped in on some of those. He's been named in several lawsuits, one in San Bernardino in particular about a gentleman up there that was his opposition. and accused him of having some of the worst possible crimes. And turned out to be an absolute fabrication. But in the meantime, his name was drugged through the media, raided his house, and just ruined the man's life. So, I know what I'm getting into. You asked why I didn't have my address listed. This is you got to have some thick skin, and it's already becoming dirty. Ellis is the culprit. Now, Lee Lowry signed a code of campaign ethics with the city. His signature is on file. And he says he took a pledge to publicly denounce and repudiate all people and messages that are negative or false.
Is that something you all signed?
Did everybody signed, yes.
But apparently no one adheres to in the city.
I'm waiting on his public repudiation of his own campaign manager or his admission that he simply doesn't follow his oath.
Now, Phil, I have a tendency to feel that you'd be a scrapper.
I've been a scrapper for a while. I subscribe to what Jeff and Mike have said, though. I mean, it's as you've indicated, there's already stuff out there about me. There's been some of this stuff has been out there for the last 15, 20 years. I represent politicians. It's part of the deal. I also have done my research, and we can talk about San Bernardino. We can talk about the Orange County Fair Board. We can talk about a whole lot of things.
Yes.
And I don't intend to do any of that.
Okay.
I'm going to respond to what's thrown at me. I'm going to run a positive campaign because at the end of the day, I've been married 33 years. My wife loves me. That's not going to change. My son loves me, and I've got my friends. So I win or I lose, I'm going to do it for the right reasons.
Great. Fred, you ready to get down and do some fighting if you need to?
Absolutely not. But if somebody picks on me, I'm a street fighter.
Okay. Otherwise, you're staying up on the high road.
Don't just look at my height. Listen, honestly,
Little banister
you
guy.
said it. Fred, they haven't attacked you yet.
They haven't attacked
Not
you
a
yet,
thing.
Fred.
I'm disappointed.
You want to be in the fray.
55 years of living here in Orange County, not have a speck of bad behavior on your record. That's unheard of.
Well, you know what? I have a feeling they're going to come after you at some point, Fred.
I hope they do. Then we'll figure that I get together with my opponent and these two other guys, and we'll beat the hell out of them.
So let me ask you a question, because first of all, we're going to end this about 8:30, but something comes to my mind while I'm sitting up here with you gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank all four of you for coming, because it's important to
Yes.
Newport Beach politics to have your voices heard. And shame on the other people for not showing up. Here's the question I'd like to ask, though, is two of you here are going for the seat that involves Balboa Island,
Right.
and two of you are going for was District 7.
7, yes, sir.
Has against a Team Newport candidate. Anybody ever come to you and say, why don't one of you drop out and we can run a stronger campaign with one? Why don't one of you two drop out? I know there's differences, but has that ever crossed anybody's mind here to make a stronger campaign against Team Newport?
It's crossed, I'm sure it's crossed our minds. But constitutionally, people have a right to vote for whom they feel is the best candidate.
So you don't think that because you and Mike will
Yes, I
split
do.
the vote?
Yes, I do. I think it may have an effect.
Okay.
Yes. If I'm being perfectly honest, yes. So it's even absolutely imperative upon me to run a very strong campaign, be out there, be visible, participate in things like this. And by the way, I want to thank the two of you for offering us the opportunity to do
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
I was scared to death. I mean, feet to the fire.
I don't know why people are so
this is
afraid
bad.
of
This is
feet
just-
to the fire.
You know, I
because
gotta
it's
admit,
just
I was
to
afraid of Barbara the
discuss it.
first time I met
I was
her.
going to say,
This has been
everybody's
excellent.
afraid of Barbara.
Yeah.
Been an
Actually, true story for all four of you. Barbara was running a campaign years ago against
2006.
Leslie Daigle.
6.
That's right.
And she had the unfortunate of coming up against Dave Ellis. she decided to back out of the race. And I called Barbara up and I said, you want to have more fun than being a politician? Why don't you be a columnist? And Barbara came over, we got her columnist job, and I think she's enjoyed it a lot more. So I give you guys all a second alternative on that. I think one of the things I'd like to wrap up here, and I'll turn it back over to Barbara, is I'm going to start with Fred, and I want to give you about 60 seconds,
Okay.
no more than 90.
All right.
I want you to look into the camera and tell the people of Newport Beach why they should vote for you.
Well, you know, I've mentioned it a few times, but you were asking questions. I'm running number one on my experience. Of 43 years of developing a company of 36 people through 40 years to 1,200 people when we sold the company. So I know business. My business was urban planning. Mission Viejo Lake is my brainchild. Wow. Corte de Casa, Aliso Viejo. That's the experience part. I'm knowledgeable about our city, not only for 55 years, but for the last 19. And most importantly, now I have the time, the energy, as you can see, and I have the money to spend to do more for my city.
Very good.
Phil, why should the people of Newport Beach vote for you?
Well, the first time I met Barbara, I said to her, if you don't have some sand between your toes and some seaweed in the trunk of your car, you cannot either understand nor represent this community.
Great line.
If you
Very good.
don't have a kid that's gone through the school district, played Little League baseball, you don't understand the parks, you don't understand the schools. If you don't have a wife who volunteers in EQUAC, in the Arts Commission, in the Mayor's Budget Commission, you don't understand how the city works. If you don't participate in this city, if you don't go to events, if you don't talk to both the elected officials and the police and fire. I've gone out on 2 ride-alongs with the police and the fire since I became a candidate. I understand how this city works. I understand what these guys go through. And without that understanding, without that passion for this community, you can't represent it. And that's the basis. I understand the politics, I understand the finances, I understand sewers and water districts, but I also understand the people who live here. And I understand why people like Will O'Neill move here, because it's a beautiful place. But you can't move here and then in the next year run for office. You have to be here like everybody up in this dais has been for a while, so you understand the movement, the nuances of this community. And that's why I'm running.
Very good.
Thank
Mike?
you. Mike?
I am an activist. I'm a very busy activist. I dedicate already, currently, today, and have for years, about 30 to 40 hours a week in being an activist. I've written thousands and thousands of pages on my positions about Newport Beach, and nobody's ever come up to me and said that that's a bad idea. So I think I'm pretty in touch. I'm a known quantity. I don't have a campaign manager, so after campaign season is up, you're still going to get the same mic. You'll still get the same mic that has advocated for honoring Greenlight. You'll still get the same mic that has fought to reduce taxes. You'll still get the same mic that's fought to save Dog Beach. You'll still get the same mic that has done all of these things for the citizens of Newport Beach for years. That's the mic you'll get. Even having a campaign manager, I've taken the largest slates away from both of my opponent's campaign managers, buying them both. We're going to have about 180,000 pieces of mail coming out, which is an absurd number for an election. I wish people were more active and we didn't have to rely on money, but the fact is that we do. So it's going to give me a very big advantage in the election upcoming. So between that and my history here as an activist right here in Newport Beach, I humbly ask for your vote. It will make a difference this election cycle.
Thank you. Jeff Herdman?
I'm going to put all the issues and the politics aside and just give you a response from my heart as far as why I'm running for city council. I was 8 years old when I moved to this city. Irvine Terrace, Fashion Island, Promontory Point, Linda Isle, Big Canyon, Harborview homes didn't even exist. I used to horseback ride at Buffalo Ranch. I absolutely love this city. My wife and I have been really fortunate to be able to do some nice traveling since we both retired over the last 10 years. And you know, when you run into fellow tourists, usually the first question is, well, where are you from? And Sally and I are always so proud to say that we're from Newport Beach. And I want to continue to be able to say that I'm proud of living in the city of Newport Beach. I would consider it an absolute honor if you vote for me for city council. And I promise you right up front that I will represent you. I will seek your opinion. And I will vote based on the majority opinion as opposed to my own personal opinions.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Well, Tom, I think that wraps up the 10th edition of Feet to the Fire. We're out of time. Let's have a round of applause for our candidates. You've all done a great job. You've got a great crop of candidates. We only touched on some of the issues that are important, but I urge each and every voter to get out there this campaign season and on election day. Volunteer for a candidate, get to know them, get to read their websites, and really participate because every vote does count. I want to take this opportunity to thank OCC again for giving us this beautiful stage, NBTV for taping it, KOCI for airing it when on the radio, and of course for the Daily Pilot for sponsoring all of my efforts. And Tom, thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me a wonderful career. I love you, and I love all of you too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.